Welcome to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, respective radio stations island-wide, TelTV plus Channel 15, and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, August 5th, 2025. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Transport, Telecommunication, Tourism, the Honorable Grisha Helicho Martin. Minister Martin, Helicho Martin, you have the floor.
Good morning, Rolika. Thank you. I know I have a long name and a long title. It happens to me too. Good morning, everyone listening to the tune of my voice. Good morning to our media representative here. Good morning to my colleague minister. Today, I would like to update the people of St. Martin on several important matters. So bear with me, it's going to take some time. Currently before my ministry. So the ongoing review, we want to start with the ongoing review of the fuel clause, the outcomes of our recent trade mission to Miami, and an exciting opportunity for our young women through the cruise industry, and finally, the growing connection between public safety and our future economy. So at first glance, these may appear to be separate topics, but they are not. They're all connected by one common objective: building confidence in St. Martin. Confidence in our public institution, confidence in our economy, confidence in our tourism product, and confidence in opportunities for our people, and ultimately, confidence in the future of our country. Every initiative my ministry pursues is aimed at strengthening that confidence, because confidence is what encourages investments, supports businesses, creates jobs, reassures our residents that we are moving in the right direction. With that in mind, let me begin with GEBE. I know that high electricity bill and fluctuations in the fuel clause continue to place a tremendous pressure on the household budgets and our local businesses. I hear the frustration and I understand the concern. And I understand why the people of St. Martin are demanding clear answers. When this government assumed office, we made a commitment to establish a utility regulation system that is lawful, transparent, professionally supervised, and capable of serving this country long after any individual government has left office. For many years, the regulatory framework envisioned in law was never fully activated. That regulatory gap was inherited by this government. And today, we're closing that gap. Rather than introducing another temporary solution that might later prove ineffective or legally vulnerable, we choose to build a regulatory framework that protects consumers through sound legislation, independent oversight, and evidence-based decision-making. That work is now well underway. On July 13, BTP, acting in its capacity as a concession supervisor under the ministerial decree, formally issued GB with a comprehensive request for information. The supervisor requested operational data, pricing information, and financial records necessary to independently examine GEBE's billing practice and fuel clause calculation. I can officially confirm today that GEBE has cooperated fully throughout this process and has complied with the required deadlines. During the final week of July, more than 400 financial, operational, and technical documents were submitted to BTP. These include fuel invoices, generation data, efficiency reports, financial records, and other supporting documents required to verify how electricity costs are calculated and ultimately passed on to the consumers. This is an important milestone because it means that the process has now moved beyond speculation into now verification. Financial analysts Engineers and legal experts are now examining the actual source documents, verifying individual costs, and comparing GEBE's records against relevant fuel market information and applicable regulations. This is precisely how government should work. Facts before conclusion, evidence before opinion, and accountability before assumptions. So where do we go from here? First, BTP is preparing its preliminary technical findings for presentation to the Council of Ministers sometime during the month of August. Second, following that review, BTP will begin issuing structured public reports explaining its verified findings, providing greater transparency regarding the fuel clause, and identifying areas where accountability and operational efficiency can be strengthened. Naturally, any lawful confidentiality required will continue to be respected. So certain things may have to be withheld based on confidentiality. Third, the information gathered through this review will assist government in finalizing the national decree containing general measures to the LBHAM, which will establish permanent regulatory framework governing utility oversight, fuel clause calculation, and social rate mechanism designed to protect seniors and vulnerable households. Let me be clear about what I will not do. I will not prejudge any independent technical review, and I will not promise to predetermine outcome before the evidence has been fully examined. The people of St. Martin deserves facts, not speculation. So what I can promise is this. If this review identifies errors, inefficiencies, or practices requiring corrections, those findings will guide the lawful action this government will take. That is our responsibility, because responsible government is not measured by how quickly it responds. It is measured by whether it responds correctly. So the work now taking place represents more than a review of electricity bills. It represents another step towards restoring public confidence in our institution through professionalism, transparency, and accountability. That is how lasting reform is achieved. Having spoken about strengthening confidence in one of our country's most important public institutions, let me now turn to another important aspect of strengthening confidence and expanding opportunities for our economy through international partnership. So last week, I traveled to Miami together with the representative of the St. Martin Chamber of Commerce and Industry, COSI, for a series of strategic working meetings. These were not courtesy visits. They were working sessions with a clear purpose. We met with representatives of the Office of the Mayor of Miami-Dade, the mayor herself, the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the Dutch Consulate in Miami. Each meeting focused on practical outcome. How do we create more opportunities for St. Martin business? How do we strengthen our tourism product? How do we expand training opportunities for our people? How do we build stronger institutions and economic partnership that will continue to deliver value for years to come? Those were the questions guiding every discussion. And one of the central topics was the development of a possible sister city relationship between St. Martin and Miami-Dade County, subject to approval, of course, of the Council of Ministers. This sister city relationship should never become merely a ceremonial title or another agreement sitting on a shelf. When properly developed, it becomes a practical platform for trade, tourism, entrepreneurship, workforce development, education, and the exchange of technical expertise. Miami has established itself as one of the world's leading tourism destinations and commercial gateways connecting North America, Latin America, and the Caribbean. There is much we can learn from their experience. And at the same time, St. Martin brings tremendous value to such a partnership. We occupy a strategic position within Northeastern Caribbean. We possess extensive regional relationship, and we offer valuable insights to international business seeking opportunities throughout our regions. That is the type of partnership we are pursuing. one not built on ceremony, but one that can mutually be beneficial. So during our discussions, another subject emerged that is equally important to St. Martin's future. Even globally successful destinations such as Miami continually evaluate whether their tourism model is generating sufficient. So during our discussions in Miami, another important subject emerged. Even one of the world's most successful tourism destinations, it is a sign of responsible leadership. No destination can, and government must evolve with them. For several months now, there has been a growing public discussion about the type of tourism. The discussion should never be about placing labels on people. There are no good tourists and bad tourists. There are no high-quality visitors and low-quality visitors. Every visitor who chooses St. Martin deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And we must never judge an entire visitor market based on an action of a few individuals. That is not who we are. At the same time, responsible government asks responsible questions. Is our tourism model generating sustainable economic value? Are our businesses benefiting? Are we creating quality employment? Are our visitors respecting our island? Are our people and our culture? Are we maximizing the economic opportunities that tourism can bring? Those are legitimate policy questions. They are the same questions being asked by successful tourism destinations around the world. And we must also remember where we came from. When Hurricane Irma devastated our country, and later COVID-19 brought tourism around the world to us, continue choosing St. Martin as we rebuild. Those visitors helped keep our employees working. They supported our restaurants and the shops. They shopped in our stores. They even booked tours, and they helped keep businesses alive during some of the most difficult years in our history. And that contribution should never be forgotten. And as our destination continues to recover and mature, however, our tourism strategy must also mature. Growth alone is no longer enough. And our objectives must now be sustainable growth that creates great value for our people and our businesses and our economy. That is why my ministry has begun listening carefully to the concerns raised by segments of the private sector. Business owners has reported dispute credit card transaction and chargebacks that they believe may have involved in fraudulent activity. Also, others have reported disruptive behavior, public altercations, and incidents that negatively affect customers' experiences and ultimately St. Martin's reputation. If these incidents are isolated, then they should be treated as isolated incidents. 1 minute. If objective evidence demonstrates recurring patterns, then government has a responsibility to understand them and determine whether policy responses are necessary. But let me be absolutely clear. Government policy will never be based on rumors, and it will never be based on social media commentary. It will be based on assumptions. It will never be based on assumptions. It will never unfairly stigmatize an entire nationality, ethnicity, or visitors market because the behavior of a few individuals. We will follow the facts. Nothing more, nothing less. For that reason, I have formally requested a detailed written feedback from the St. Martin Hospitality and Trade Association. Their membership represents a significant portion of our tourism industry and is well positioned to help us understand whether these concerns are isolated or more widespread. We have asked SHTA to provide information regarding the types of incidents being reported, their frequencies, and sectors most affected, and measures businesses have already implemented. The ministry is also engaged with hoteliers, restaurants, retailers, financial institutions, banks, tour operators, and other stakeholders so that we can obtain a complete picture of what is actually taking place. Because good policy begins with good information. Our objective is straightforward: protect legitimate businesses from fraud and abuse. Our legitimate consumer complaints are handled fairly, strengthen confidence in our tourism product, and continue building a visitor economy that is the tourism strategy that this ministry is pursuing. Not one driven by emotions, not one driven by social media, but one guided by evident partnership and long-term economic sustainability. While we continue strengthening today's tourism industry, we must also invest in tomorrow's leader. I am therefore extremely pleased to announce that the Ministry of TIAT has once again been invited by the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, FCCA, to nominate up to 3 outstanding women from St. Martin to participate in its prestigious Young Women's Mentorship Initiative. This 10-month program provides something far more valuable than a certificate. It provides an opportunity. Selected participants will receive mentorship from senior female executives within the international cruise industry, gain executive-level exposure, participate in professional development programs, expand their international networks, and receive first-hand insight into the world's most dynamic tourism sectors. These are experiences that can shape careers and create future leaders. Eligible applicants must be women between the ages of 18 and 24, resides in St. Martin, possesses a valid travel documentation, and satisfy the eligible requirements established by FCCA. Applications close on August 17, and because the ministry must complete its nomination process before the deadline, interested applicants are encouraged to carefully review the requirements published on the government website and submit their applicants promptly. To every young woman listening today, I say to you, do not be afraid of self-doubt to convince you that opportunities like this are meant for someone else. They're meant for you. Believe in your potential, invest in yourself, and step forward, because one application can open a door that changes the direction of your entire life. While building future leaders is essential, protecting the environment in which those leaders will live, work, and build their careers is equally important. And that brings me to the final topic this morning: public safety. Throughout today's briefing, I have spoken about strengthening confidence in public institutions, confidence in our utilities, confidence in our international partnership, confidence in our tourism strategy, and confidence in opportunities for young people. But there is one issue that influences every one of those efforts more than any other: public safety. My people, crime is not just a justice issue. Crime is also an economic issue. Every robbery, every home invasion, every shooting, every act of violence, every one of these incidents leaves behind more than a victim. It leaves behind uncertainty, it weakens business confidence, it discourages investment, and it affects tourism. It changes how residents feel about their own neighborhood. It shapes how the rest of the world views St. Martin. And when a business owner is robbed, they don't simply lose merchandise, they lose confidence. When families no longer feel safe in their homes, confidence is lost. When visitors begin questioning whether St. Martin is still the safe and welcoming destination they remember, confidence is lost. When investors begin asking whether this is the right place to expand their businesses, confidence is lost. That is why public safety affects every single ministry. Justice carries the constitutional responsibility for policing, investigation, prosecution, and detention. My responsibility as Minister of TIAT, Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, is different. My responsibility is to understand how crime affects our economy, our investment climate, our tourism product, our business community, and the livelihoods of our people. That is why I have formally requested an urgent meeting with the Minister of Justice together with our justice chain partners. My request is not about assigning blame. It's not about politics. It's not about urgency. It's about urgency. It's about coordination. And it's about ensuring that every agency understands that public safety and economic prosperity are inseparable. Because if we fail to protect confidence in our country, every sector eventually pays the price. Before I conclude, I want to speak directly to the young people of St. Martin. especially young men. Fellas, please hear me. Some of you believe that carrying a gun earns respect. Some of you believe that joining a robbery makes you powerful. Some of you believe that quick money is easier than honest work. But those are lies. Real strength is not found behind a weapon. Real respect is not earned through fear. Real success is never built on someone else's pain. Every robbery you commit doesn't just hurt the victim. It hurts our community. It hurts our country. Every shooting doesn't just destroy one family. It damages the future of a young person trying to find a job. Every act of violence makes it harder for businesses to invest, harder for tourists to choose St. Martin, harder for employees to hire, harder for the economy to grow. And in the end, you are helping to destroy the very island that was one day provide for your future children. This country belongs to you. Protect it. Don't destroy it. Build it. And if you already gone down that wrong path, understand this. Your story is not over. One mistake does not have to become your entire future. There are people willing to help you. Reach out before the prison cell. Reach out before the courtroom. Reach out beside your grave. Speak to your parents. Speak to your grandparents. Speak to your pastor, your teacher, your coach. Absolutely no shame in asking for help. The greatest courage is often found in admitting you need it. Ask young people to make better choices while failing to provide better opportunities. That is why we must continue investing in education, mentorship, sports, the creative industry, tourism, technology, and agriculture. Every legitimate pathway that gives our young people hope and purpose. My ministry stands ready to work alongside justice, education, VSR, community organization, churches, and the private sector to help create more of those opportunities. But government alone cannot make the choice. Only you can. Choose education over crime. Choose discipline over destruction. Choose hard work over easy money. Choose purpose over violence. Choose a future that makes your family proud. Choose to become part of a generation that builds St. Martin instead of breaking it. People of St. Martin, there is a common thread running through every single thing I have spoken about this morning. Whether we're strengthening oversight in GB, expanding international partnership, building a stronger tourism economy, creating opportunities for our young women, are working with our justice partners to address the crime. Every one of these efforts is about one thing: building confidence in St. Martin. Confidence in our institutions, our economy that is growing, our businesses that can, confidence that businesses can invest, confidence that families can feel safe, confidence that our young people have a future worth believing in. Confidence is one of the most valuable assets any nation possesses. Businesses invest where there's confidence. Visitors travel where there is confidence. Families build their futures where there's confidence. Young people dream where there's confidence. And that confidence cannot be created by government alone. It belongs to all of us. To every resident, business owner, church, school, community organization, every parent, every young person listening to the sound of my voice today. To our youth, I leave you with this final thought. This island, it has invested in you. Now I ask you to invest in your island. Protect it. Respect it. Lead it. Because St. Martin, the St. Martin we build today will become the St. Martin our children inherit tomorrow. Together, let us continue to build a stronger and safer and more prosperous St. Martin. God bless our island. And I look forward to any questions we have.
Thank you, Minister Haile Martin, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Justice, Natalie Tacklin, to address you. Minister Tacklin, you have the floor.
Good morning, Rolaika, and to the members of DCOMM. Good morning to my colleague, Minister of TIAT, and it's nice to see you here again, Emile, so that we have some questions coming from the press. And of course, to the people of St. Martin, from whatever platform you may be listening to the sound of my voice. Thank you all again for being here. Most weeks, I stand before you to provide updates, and while the individual stories may differ, the larger story remains the same. Across every department of the Ministry of Justice, work continues to strengthen our institutions, improve the services we provide, invest in our people, and enhance public safety. Before turning to today's updates, I would like to acknowledge that last week, on July 30th, the international community observed World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. This year's theme, Trapped Behind the Scam, highlights the growing exploitation of victims who are trafficked and forced into online scam operations. Through our ongoing See Something, Say Something campaign, we continue to remind the public that human trafficking can exist in many forms, often hidden in plain sight. If you see something that doesn't seem right, say something. Reports can be made anonymously by calling 9300. That's 9300, 9300. If you are not sure what to look out for, I encourage you to visit the website nrc.sx to learn how to recognize the warning signs. Together, we can help protect the vulnerable and ensure there is no safe haven for human trafficking in St. Martin. Moving on to department updates. Within our detention sector reform program, work continues on several important fronts. First, I am pleased to share that the recruitment process for correctional officers at the Point Blanche Prison and House of Detention has generated an overwhelming response. More than 100 individuals applied for these positions, demonstrating strong public interest in serving within our justice system and supporting rehabilitation. The application period has now closed, and the selection committee is reviewing submissions, and interviews are scheduled to begin this month. Construction for the new Point Blanche prison also continues to move forward. Recently, the first demolition took place, with more to come. Representatives from KPSM, the Ministry of Romi, and project contractors also met to coordinate road safety measures that will be implemented throughout the various phases of construction. Large infrastructure projects inevitably affect surrounding communities, and from the very beginning, we have committed to ensuring that public safety remains central to every stage of this project. This coordination will help minimize disruptions in the Point Blanche area while protecting residents, motorists, pedestrians, and construction personnel as work progresses. This is another example of the coordinated approach being taken to ensure development and public safety is moving forward together. Our Court of Guardianship continues to demonstrate that justice is also about prevention, education, and protecting our most vulnerable. Last month, in partnership with Prominent Women, the department successfully hosted the first session of its community awareness series focused on child protection, abuse and neglect, and the important role of the Court of Guardianship. Although attendance was modest, participation, on the other hand, was exceptional. Parents and caregivers actively engaged in discussions, asked thoughtful questions, and demonstrated a genuine desire to better understand both their rights and their responsibilities. These conversations matter because protecting children begins long before intervention becomes necessary. It begins with education, awareness, and empowering families with the knowledge that they need. The ministry remains committed to expanding these types of community outreach initiatives because prevention will always remain one of the strongest tools within our justice system. Turning now to the Immigration and Border Protection Services. Last month, the ministry officially launched the new Foreigner Management System, the FMS, marking an important step toward modernizing our immigration services. As we continue the transition, please note that the new applications submitted through FMS are being processed as intended. Applications submitted through the previous portal also remain active and are currently being processed as quickly as possible by immigration staff, even if no longer available to the applicants via the portal. We've actually also enlisted the help of the Civil Registry for the coming month in order to make up and get through this backlog that was in the old system. So we would like to clear out everything from 2025 and before to ensure that everything is completely up to date. So I would like to take this opportunity as well for thanking the staff of the Civil Registry who have volunteered to work overtime in their evening hours and their weekends in order to help us address this backlog, and also my gratitude expressed to the Ministry of Azet and to the Prime Minister for facilitating the use of these employees to assist justice. I think this is a nice example of how government can work together in order to address and better the service that we provide to the public. I also want to note to applicants who have submitted within the old portal that you do not need to resubmit your application. Once an application has been processed, immigration staff will contact the applicant directly to provide and where necessary, request any additional information required to complete the processing. All new applications or renewal applications should be submitted exclusively through the new FMS system. I also want to advise the public that due to the summer vacation period, the processing of declarations of conduct or the police records by the Public Prosecutor's Office in Curaçao is experiencing slight delays until the end of August. We appreciate the public's patience while our Kingdom partners work through this seasonal period. Beyond customer service, our Immigration and Border Protection Service continues carrying out its critical responsibility of protecting our borders. During the recent reporting period, which is the period of June 9th to July 15th, Border Control officers refused entry to 46 travelers who did not meet the legal requirements for admission into St. Martin. These decisions were based on established immigration legislation and include matters such as visa non-compliance, insufficient means, fraudulent documentation, and false declarations provided during the admission process. At the same time, the falsification desk detected 28 fraudulent documents and counterfeit items, including contained a strong and visible presence across the island through targeted enforcement operations, proactive patrols, and ongoing criminal. To everyone else, I ask that we continue to play our part. Public safety is a shared responsibility for the services we provide and enhance the safety and security of our country.
Just joined us. You are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, August 5th, 2026. Thank you for joining us. We now move on to the question and answer session. And as Emily of Island 92 Radio is our only media partner, I will allow you to pose your questions. You have the floor.
Thank you. I will start with our Minister of TIA. Minister, thank you for your introduction, your explanation. So I'm going to start with GB. First of all, are you aware if the new generators have been purchased as yet or not? Clearly, the generators that GB is using are old. They've been reported that they're past their life cycle. I assume that the new generators, these are 20 years more modern, would be more efficient and thereby help bring down GB's generating electricity costs. So I think buying and installing those new generators would help to bring down GB's operational costs. Can you update us on the status of that?
Yes, thank you for that question, Emil. I can say right now, no, it has not been purchased as yet, but the good news is that they are now coming to, the issue is that I think the Prime Minister mentioned in the past that it has to do with us taking too long to purchase it and financially all three, but I will allow them to make that announcement that should happen, I think, anytime now soon, because they come to a solution financially and how they're going to proceed with the purchase. So that's something that I would have to allow GB to inform the public on their own.
Okay. You mentioned that you're having BTP look at the fuel clause. But the reports that we've gotten from GB is that the base rate, the base tariff, is very old. It's outdated, and that's one of the reasons that they probably are adding things or taking money out of the fuel clause. Is that not also part of BTP's role, is to look at whether that base tariff needs to be reviewed and updated?
That's absolutely part of it. They and some expert would also assist us with reviewing that and provide suggestions to the ministry as to how we can move forward. But that is one of the roles. I mentioned earlier in my press statement that they will be coming to not Parliament, to Council of Ministers very soon with an overview of what they have received, and where they will find, if they find any discrepancies, we will leave it up to the professionals to inform us, and then based on legal.
So just for clarity.
The important thing right now is that for the first time ever, we now have the full breakdown of the, from what I'm assuming, because that's what they're reviewing right now, we have the full breakdown of the entire makeup of the fuel class, and now we're busy analyzing it. I can't make any comments because I haven't seen it as yet. What we do with the important is important right now. We have that. We should have that breakdown with us, and with BTP right now for review.
So just for clarity, is the task that's been given to BTP to review the base rate as well as the fuel clause, or is the focus only on the fuel clause?
It's both.
It's both?
Yes.
Okay. And as I look at it's published online, you can see the price per kilowatt hour that St. Martin pays compared to other Caribbean countries. And I think with the exception of Trinidad, because they have, literally oil refineries right there, so their cost price is less. St. Martin is actually very much in line with what the rest of the Caribbean's paying, and in many cases, I think even compared to Curacao, St. Martin's actually lower per kilowatt hour than some of the other islands. So just again, to set public expectations clear, should the public expect dramatic decreases in what the price per kilowatt hour is going to be, or do you think it will be more or less in line with the rest of the Caribbean?
As mentioned again in my press briefing, I'm not setting up any expectations to everyone. I need to see the information first before I can make any judgment or decisions, and so I really want to see the facts before I can make any comments on that.
So then the public should not have expectations until the facts come out.
Exactly.
Okay. You mentioned a possible sister city relationship with Miami. If I remember, there was already a sister city relationship with Tallahassee in the past.
Well, that's with the education.
And that was focused on education. So is this the same type of thing, or this is different?
This is mainly focused on assisting small businesses in St. Martin to receive opportunities there. Chamber is going to be launching their the SMART event this coming Friday, where they're giving small businesses an opportunity to even start to do trade on a trade mission with businesses in Miami to help strengthen our businesses here. So it's mainly to help grow our small, mainly our SMEs, but if large businesses wants to attend, that's not a problem, but to strengthen them and help them grow with knowledge sharing, with opportunities, with contacts, setting up a business, an account in theirs if they're going to continue doing business and expanding their business outside of St. Martin. And that is mainly what it is. And it's not only on an economic standpoint, like I mentioned as well. We met with the Tourism Authority, and they are really open to showing us their entire playbook, what happened, what went wrong, or the mistakes they made. They actually gave me their entire breakdown of how they morphed into changing the way they went from being during spring break. Miami was the hottest thing for spring break, into understanding that, spring break is not really working for us. We're now anti-spring break, and what they did to now change that, because now this type of tourism is not working for us, and what they did to mitigate that. Those are the kind of, that is what that sister agreement is. It's really helping strengthening St. Martin and having Miami and St. Martin become one. Through economy, through tourism, through agriculture as well. So it's more of an economic agreement. A strengthening of the economy.
The CHTA, the private sector Caribbean Tourism Association, is based in Miami. Did you have a chance to network with them? Because they also do events built at stimulating commerce between the U.S. and the Caribbean.
Them I did not get to meet with. No.
Okay.
But that's a good.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
In the past, one of the big advantages for Miami as a hub was American Airlines had a second flight, which overnighted in St. Martin.
I remember that.
What that did is it allowed more cities to connect without having to overnight in St. Martin, without having to overnight before coming to St. Martin. So really helped to open up St. Martin to other cities in the United States. Is that not part of
That was
your
actually
strategy?
Further down, when I met with the tourism authority, they were going to give me that opportunity to meet with them, but to meet with them to discuss exactly that American Airlines, because you know American Airlines is their main carrier in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
But the next time I go, I'm going to meet with them and discuss that. That is on the table and up for discussion. So. Yes.
Okay, last two questions. You refer to the tourism master plan and sustainable growth and feedback in terms of a direction for St. Martin. In the conference that you had, one of the themes that really came across forcefully and frequently was overdevelopment, too much development, in particular traffic, in season, that it's just unbearable. And one of the philosophies that SHTA had in the past was to actually stop focusing on the needs of tourists and focus on making St. Martin a better place to live. And once it's a better place to live, by default, you will end up fixing the things for tourists. So how about addressing that overdevelopment? Now is the time, when before the cruise ships come in, before traffic gets bad, to put
The Minister of Vrami and myself is already busy doing, remember the carrying capacity study we mentioned? The only issue we're having right now, capacity study that can help us. It's not going to only be a carrying capacity study on how many tourists we can. It's mainly on the how far can St. Martin, what's the maximum capacity that we can take when it comes to people, cars, businesses. That is going to be our guiding path to understanding what is the most St. Martin can handle moving forward.
So Council of Ministers will have a strategy in place to enact now before the tourism high season?
We're hoping to get a response. I'm hoping before this month is over that we get a positive response for the funding to start that capacity. How long that will take, I don't know, but as soon as I get the funding, I'll come back and inform everyone publicly. I would love to get an answer within months. I don't think we can wait an entire year. I'm hoping that study can be done within a few months so that we can at least have a direction in place.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
My questions are for Minister of Justice, my next set. Thank you. Minister, first, regarding your opening statement, you referred to the rehabilitation programs in the prison. We've talked about this numerous times over the past, that they have not really restarted. Have those educational programs, training programs, psychosocial assistance, mental health assistance, have those programs actually restarted now?
Yeah, so actually this week, yesterday and the day before, we actually restarted our prison education program, 2 days a week in MLC and 3 days a week at Point Blanche as an initial pilot. Besides that, we also did have in July, right? Was it June, July? We had a program with a organization out of Aruba called Turco Está Posible. That was a 2-week intervention at that time where the participating inmates, there was music, photography, they did cooking classes. This was an intensive 2-week program. Turco Está Posible is now back again and doing a 2-month program within the prison, which is also, again, 3 days a week at Point Blanche and 2 days a week at MLC, where they're also doing a variety of different types of projects. We've relaunched the prison library. SMDF is currently actually doing a drive. I actually made some donations myself yesterday, so I encourage the public to please do so themselves. They're doing a drive and insisting Turco Está Posible with actually replenishing the library and building it back. So actually the public is encouraged to donate books, games, puzzles, anything of the like that we can actually use within the prison library. And there's actually a link as well that will take you to an Amazon Amazon registry where you can purchase the items on Amazon and it'll go directly to a shipping address. I saw Roleika nodding, so she's also familiar with the project. So I think these are all great developments. Church service actually also resumed last weekend. There's had been kind of a misunderstanding between the prison and the church councils, but the church councils have now agreed and are now coming back in order to provide church service within the prison. So a lot is happening. In terms of mental health support, that was not something for the past years that has been provided. That is something that we are as well working on with MHF going forward, because as with many things within government, agreements that were in place 2 ministers ago with MHF were retracted by that minister at the time, meaning that there was no longer a legal basis to be working with MHF. Government owes MHF money that was never settled from that period. This is pre-2024. We are now coming to an arrangement with them for a payment plan, and then also the resumption of services to inmates when we need those types of services. And of course, part of our soft component planning is that we can ensure a certain baseline level of mental health care within the facility. So these are ongoing discussions and developments with MHF. But there's a lot happening. And again, things have indeed taken a lot longer to get off the ground that we would like to see. But right now, we're very encouraged with the new Tudo Costa Possível project. I think we had like 25 volunteers and individuals that want to participate in this program. So this is all great. And actually, at the end of the last program I was able to attend, they did an exhibition with all the photographs that the inmates took. The inmates took the photographs themselves. They posed in these photographs themselves. They did music, so they actually were playing in a band. Their families came to attend this exhibition. It was a really great time, and we see the enormous impact that these projects are having, and we also see that they're starting to encourage more and more of our inmate population to participate.
So I'm going to jump around a little bit. So the physical construction, you mentioned demolition, but when is the physical actually pouring concrete supposed to start?
Yeah, so right now, of course, we're still in that, we were in that phase of the contractor mobilizing. We expect that in August, September, we're going to start seeing some considerable movement of a lot of construction workers and activity going on the site. For now, it's been preparation of the site. Obviously, we're having to construct around an operating facility and make the space that is actually around the prison ready to be able to be constructed on. So right now, the out sections, and we'll be posting pictures and videos of that on our social media so that the public can also see. I posted one last week of that initial demolition. So kind of those outhouses around the wall have now been demolished. I got an update yesterday where all of it's gone. And so of course, then it'll be kind of, it's just, again, setting up the site, and it'll be digging of the foundation and things like that. But we're expecting, from what I've been told by UNOPS, who is of course in charge with handling and managing the construction, that I can expect to see considerable movements at the end of August, September.
Okay. In the past, you had referred to there were 300 hours of convictions in terms of years, 300 years of convictions that have been issued by the court awaiting to be served. Can you up or down?
Those are the numbers that we consistently receive from the prosecutor's office. I saw that they had actually gotten some media inquiries in the past few weeks, and that I saw the questions going back and forth, and where they just don't keep data in a certain way. So of course they're looking at the execution part and not really keeping track of what's in the back. So that's still the number that they are holding on to. It's still around that 300-year mark. Okay.
So there's been a lot of discussions, and I saw your Facebook post about the early release. So it was interesting. Can you explain, in your normal evaluation process, so I understand you cannot comment on individual cases, right? But your normal evaluation process in evaluating if an individual qualifies for early release does not involve consulting UNOPS. But but in this
Correct.
case, you have, in a particular case, consulted with UNOPS. Can you explain why you would sort of deviate from that
Yeah.
normal process?
Well, so normally the process is as follows. If in a regular case of early release, so the prison is in charge with keeping track of where every inmate currently in the prison is in their sentence. That list is then, of course, verified against with the prosecutor's office because they are in charge of the execution of prison sentences. By law, every inmate sits 2/3 of their prison sentence. Once the prison says this person now has reached 2/3, they initiate that file. Then, of course, then the probation services get in the picture, any prison reports, then at least that eligibility is confirmed. So the prison will say they have sat 2/3 of the sentence, that eligibility is confirmed. And then that process starts when it comes to getting reports, and JNIS will come in, they will meet with them. And then from there, once eligibility is confirmed, then the CCR, which is our Central Probation Board, will then look at do we need to attach any special conditions to the release? Is there any reason to not release the person even though they're eligible, et cetera? And then as minister, you're advised on that process. Look, UNOPS is not advised. However, I mean, without going too much into it, because it's impossible to answer your question without going into it. In this particular case, a request was received on behalf of a particular inmate by their attorney, and a calculation was made by the prison showing that they were not eligible for early release, so the whole other process doesn't come into the picture. And of course, on behalf of that applicant, also a differing calculation to the prison's calculation was submitted. In that case, I thought, well, given the fact that now I have two competing things, let me find an independent authority to verify whether or not the prison's calculation is correct, and which is what took place in that instance. And this is also fits within the mandate that UNOPS has, because they are advising on soft components, they are advising the prison records, all of these things fall within that mandate, which is why that extra check took place, just to avoid, unnecessary litigation and things like this, which is why, out of kind of, in that sense, extra precaution to be sure of, hey, because there were two competing calculations, that be done.
And normally, I would imagine that the behavior, those types of reports from within prison factor in. Is that done in a formal process? So in other words, if
that is done if the person is eligible for early release. In this case, the person was not yet eligible for early release, so we don't reach the stage as yet of prison reports, probation services, none of that yet comes into the picture.
So, we've had conversations on and off the air about how you manage, and part of the reform process, but how you also, manage behavior within the facility. It seems to me it would make sense to let people know from even entry into the facility, this is what the process looks like, and reward good behavior and punish bad behavior. Why not make that process more transparent from the very beginning? So
well, the thing is, behavior doesn't factor into whether or not you're eligible. The law says you have to sit 2/3 of your sentence, regardless of how you behave. And from there, it looks at percentage-wise who is ahead of you. So it's 66.32% for everyone that is in the prison, regardless of what type of crime they have committed, across the board. So in that sense, it's looking at who is the first on the list, and that doesn't matter how long your sentence is, it's just a proportionate amount of your sentence, which is something that we explained there, where it feels strange to someone where somebody who maybe has 5 years left on their sentence while you have maybe 8 months left on yours, how is it he can be released before me? But maybe he has a 30-year sentence. So he's sat that 2/3, and which is the way that the law says, because it takes away that subjectivity, that it doesn't allow a minister to say, well, the crime you did was this, or you're so and so. So it takes away that subjectivity of it and that misuse of that authority. It makes everybody equal in the eyes of the law, regardless of what type of crime you committed. So in that case, we're not talking about that. When we're looking at behavior is when, in that sense, that 2/3, let's say if you have severely misbehaved within the prison environment, then we will say, well, now you don't get to go on probation because you've attacked guards, you've been violent towards other inmates and things like that. But that's only when you have arrived at that 2/3 of your sentence. So in that sense, the only way that we can reward good behavior in an earlier stage within our prison environment and within the confines of the law are by giving inmates privileges within the environment. And that is something that we're looking at within the new prison. You know, we've talked about how do we look at rewarding good behavior, you know, maybe things like conjugal visits and the like, you know, that those are the ways that you play around with things like that. I just visited an institution in the Netherlands where they also have different categories of inmates. And for example, if you behave well, you're allowed to work. You know, if you don't, then you're in a different regime where you're restricted in what you're allowed to do. So those are the ways that we can control the prison environment and reward behavior. But getting out earlier than that 2/3 is not something that the law allows currently, unless it's a detention capacity issue, in which case then we get into that train policy that everybody talks about, and then it does give some leeway to then say, okay, well, you've served 60%, so therefore, but you know, it's impossible for one person to jump ahead of the people in front of them.
So how do you balance this capacity issue against the 300 years of sentences waiting to be served? Doesn't the fact that the public who might be considering or doing something illegal says, well, chances are I'm not going to go in and serve my time anyway, so it takes away that deterrent. So doesn't it make sense to sort of balance things a little bit and try and bring that 300 years down?
It does, but unfortunately we have from a criminological perspective, there's an issue that we have in this country on both ends, and we've had it for the past 10 years because we have a reduction in detention capacity since 2017. However, you know, it's on the front end and on the back end, it's doing something because people know I get sentenced. When am I ever going to go to jail? But on the back end as well, it's also eroding, and you get a prison sentence, but you don't even have to sit part of it. If you let people out at 40%, 50%, then it also takes away the value of a prison sentence. At the end of the day, we're also balancing how much we can do. Unfortunately, what it is that a lot of our inmates currently serving within the prison environment are there for very serious crimes, meaning that they have very long sentences, which means that for them to reach 2/3 takes a really long time. So you're not able to free up a lot of capacity. You know, we've had situations where the prosecutor is like, I urgently need space, and we go to look, and we're like, even if we drop to 60%, 59%, 58%, I can make 2 spaces for her in Point Blanche, for example, at that particular time. So that's the issue that we have, because we're playing with a very small amount of spaces. And I think it's important for the public to understand as well that as Minister of Justice, I'm not responsible for the execution of sentences. I don't choose who goes to prison, when they go to prison. That is the public prosecutor's prerogative. And on the back end, while I do have in Article 137 what they call the train policy to allow that 2/3 to drop temporarily as a measure to create detention capacity, there has to be an establishment of an acute need for space, and I can't establish an acute need for capacity. The prosecutor needs to tell me, well, I have this issue on the front, I need to create space right now, today, tomorrow, and then we can have temporarily let some people out to create that space. So we're trying as much as we can to balance, but it's difficult.
And just for clarity, in the calculations, is the time served for pretrial detention factored into your calculations?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister Tacklin. Thank you, Emil. This does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Any further questions can be sent to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. For rebroadcast, tune into stmartingov.org, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, TEL-TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel, Government of St. Martin. For a video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Government of St. Martin and the Department of Communication, I'm Rolika Roach, and wishing you a pleasant day further.